Shayla Bivens, a black woman, was arrested by corrupt cops. Then, the highest-ranking NSA official walks into court. They say life can change in the blink of an eye. Sometimes, it's a lucky break you never saw coming. Sometimes, it's a nightmare that arrives with blaring sirens and flashing lights. This is the story of Shayla Bivens, a brilliant black woman who found herself staring down a future of injustice after a humiliating arrest by corrupt cops. In an astonishing twist of fate, the highest-ranking official at the National Security Agency walked into the courtroom during her hearing, and that was only the beginning. The world would soon learn that the man everyone thought was there to rescue her was, in fact, her subordinate. Shayla Bivens was the kind of person most people would describe as focused. She was 35, a confident black woman, and possessed an air of self-assured calm that could make an entire conference room fall silent when she stood to speak. Yet, despite her commanding presence at the podium or in high-level meetings, Shayla preferred to remain inconspicuous in her day-to-day life. She walked anonymously among crowds, rarely hinting at her extraordinary profession. After all, the best intelligence operatives often live behind the plainest of masks. That Tuesday morning was no different. Shayla woke up in her modest suburban home near Laurel, Maryland, close to NSA headquarters at Fort Meade, though few people realized what her proximity implied. She'd taken the day off to handle personal errands and planned to drive to a small neighboring county where she'd grown up, Prince George's County. On her schedule, a quick visit to a local community center to offer volunteer cybersecurity training for underprivileged kids. Shayla firmly believed in giving back. Her drive was peaceful at first. She sipped coffee from her thermos, listening to a local news radio station discussing new youth outreach programs. The roads were nearly empty. She thought about how she'd help the kids navigate the internet safely, how she'd show them the wonders of coding. She might have even offered a few tips about future career paths, though she'd never mentioned the NSA. She had a knack for keeping her personal role under wraps. But just as she turned onto a quieter stretch of road, she noticed a police cruiser tailing her. It switched lanes to follow her turn, then sped up to close the distance. A slight tingle of dread ran down her spine. She was used to traveling discreetly, and she'd done nothing that would attract attention. Still, the cruiser's red and blue lights flared to life. "Pull over," a stern voice crackled through the speaker. Shayla calmly complied. She pulled to the shoulder and turned off the ignition. The early spring sun was bright. A bead of sweat formed at her temple. Nothing triggers caution in a black motorist like unexpected police attention. She reminded herself to remain polite, keep both hands visible, and comply with standard requests. Shayla had done security briefings about these scenarios for colleagues and friends. Little did she know, these particular cops had designs that went far beyond a routine traffic stop. "License and registration," the officer barked. His partner hovered near the rear window, one hand resting on the grip of his holstered firearm. Shayla took a calming breath. She offered a polite greeting and handed the officer her credentials. The badge on his chest read Officer Kevin Forbes. His thick eyebrows furrowed when he glanced at her license. "Were you headed in such a hurry?" he asked. Shayla was doing maybe 2 miles above the speed limit, hardly a hurry. She clarified her speed, but the man's eyes narrowed suspiciously. He stepped away from the window and conferred with his partner, a silent, tall officer named LeBron, who gave Shayla an occasional hostile glare. Sitting there, Shayla felt the tingle of something off. She'd studied enough behavioral patterns in her career to recognize that Officer Forbes didn't just suspect a traffic violation. He was fishing for something. His posture radiated aggression, the kind that extends far beyond standard policing. When Forbes returned, he asked Shayla to step out of the vehicle. She complied without protest. "Ma'am, you got anything illegal on you?" Forbes asked. Shayla's eyebrows rose. "No, officer," she replied, her tone measured. He patted her down in full view of passing traffic, ignoring the humiliating spectacle it created. Shayla felt the rush of shame, but also a spark of anger. She kept her composure. She was no stranger to injustice, though rarely had she been on the receiving end so blatantly. In the trunk, Shayla carried a small toolkit with a few spare electronics, cables, and a laptop for her demonstration at the community center. Officer LeBron rummaged through them with an intensity that seemed inappropriate for a mere traffic stop. Then, as if on cue, Forbes made a dramatic show of discovering a suspicious plastic bag among her belongings. Shayla stared in disbelief. She'd never seen this bag of white powder in her life. "What's this?" Forbes demanded, waving the bag in her face. Shayla's shock was genuine, and it played right into their charade. Her mouth felt dry, but she managed to speak. "I have no idea. That's not mine." LeBron smiled wryly, as if he'd expected that response. Her mind raced. This was an old trick, planting evidence, framing someone to meet a quota or exploit a vulnerable motorist. Shayla knew that if she revealed who she truly was, it would blow open more questions than answers. But the risk of not revealing her identity seemed even greater right now, though Shayla was so stunned she wasn't sure how to proceed. "You have the right to remain silent," Forbes recited, pulling her hands behind her back for the cuffs. That was the moment Shayla understood this wasn't just a random stop gone awry. This was a deliberate setup. Why her? The question flared in her mind. Why would they pick her to plant drugs on? Shayla had spent her career analyzing threats and dissecting motives, yet never had she been as personally threatened as she was now. She was shoved into the back seat of the cruiser, her mind swirling with fear, anger, and a million questions. These police officers clearly thought they had an easy mark, a black woman alone on a country road, an easy statistic, an easy scapegoat, or maybe an easy victim of a corrupt system. Little did they know how entirely they had miscalculated. The station was a small, worn-out building in a less-traveled part of the county. As Forbes hauled Shayla out of the cruiser, a couple of other officers glanced over. No one seemed particularly surprised or concerned. It looked like business as usual. Shayla kept her eyes forward, her lips set in a tight line. She remembered every detail. If she could stay calm, she might find a moment to call someone. Maybe Victor Lloyd, her closest colleague and, ironically, her direct subordinate at the NSA. However, Shayla had a strict professional code that discouraged sharing personal details outside essential channels. But in a moment like this, she could not fight alone. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed annoyingly. Forbes removed Shayla's cuffs, only to force her to place her fingertips in black ink for booking. Then came the mugshot. She noticed the reflection of her face in the camera, stoic, worried, but refusing to appear defeated. LeBron hovered in the background, arms crossed. The entire station felt rancid with an undercurrent of corruption. Shayla could sense it in the casual jokes, the way the officers eyed her, as if she were less than human. Then, the desk sergeant, a stout man named Quincy, typed up Shayla's information. He read the arresting officer's statement with a bored expression. Suspect found in possession of a controlled substance, resisted arrest. Shayla's jaw dropped at that second accusation. She had done nothing of the sort, but she bit her tongue. She needed a lawyer, and perhaps, if push came to shove, she'd leverage her position at the NSA. But Shayla still wasn't sure if revealing her identity would fix or complicate matters. She wasn't exactly eager to blow her cover for a local, corrupt precinct. Perhaps she could handle this the normal way, as a citizen with rights. Quincy turned to Shayla. "You get one phone call." Shayla nodded gratefully, but the sergeant waved a disclaiming finger. "Only after processing, and it better be quick." She could tell from his tone he had no intention of making things easy. They shoved her into a holding cell with 3 other women, each hunched or pacing. The smell of stale sweat and the sour aftertaste of fear clung to the cinder block walls. Shayla kept to herself, choosing a corner. She tried to compose her thoughts, fight the swirl of outrage and confusion inside. How quickly her day had descended from calm routine into an absurd tragedy. Yet, Shayla wasn't entirely powerless. She was resourceful in ways these crooked cops couldn't fathom. She studied them from behind the bars. Forbes and LeBron had retreated to the station's main desk, likely congratulating themselves or forging a believable narrative. Shayla prayed for a moment alone with the phone. As soon as she got it, she would send a coded text to the one man she trusted enough to handle this quietly. At first, Victor Lloyd. But Shayla also knew there was a bigger question. Why had they targeted her? Was it truly random, or did someone know about her real position? As hours crept by, Shayla's mind spun with suspicion. In her line of work, coincidences rarely existed. Someone out there might have orchestrated a takedown, and if so, Shayla was inadvertently playing right into their trap. Eventually, she was pulled from the holding cell. Sergeant Quincy handed Shayla a battered phone. "One call," he repeated grimly. Shayla nodded. She dialed the number with care. On the surface, it would appear to be a call to a friend or attorney, but Shayla's contact on the other end of the line was truly special. Victor Lloyd answered on the second ring. Hello. His voice was level, calm, with a slight tension Shayla could detect. She recognized that tone. It was how he answered whenever someone unexpected called him on a possibly monitored line. It's me, Shayla began. She made her voice sound shaky, as if she were simply distressed. I need help. There was a slight hesitation on the other end as Victor processed what was happening. He asked, Where are you? Shayla exhaled, choosing her words carefully. Local station in Prince George's County. They say I had something in my trunk, but we both know that's not right. She felt the sergeant's suspicious stare on her. She pressed on. I need an attorney or some sort of help. She paused, letting the silence imply deeper meaning. Victor, infinitely perceptive, caught on. I'll make a call, he assured. Sit tight, Shayla. She hung up. A wave of relief coursed through her. If there was one person in the world who could unravel this, it was Victor Lloyd. He was the deputy director of the NSA, a powerful man with vast resources, though Shayla remained above him in rank and authority, which was a carefully guarded secret known only within a tight inner circle. She'd never intended for him to come to her rescue in such a public fiasco, yet here they were. But Shayla knew how these things could escalate. If the station's corruption ran deep, they might try to block outside legal counsel or spin the story further. She realized a potential hailstorm was coming her way. The question wasn't whether help would arrive, but how quickly and whether Shayla could withstand the personal cost if her identity were exposed. If the details of her job and her leadership over one of the most secretive intelligence arms in the nation came to light, the blowback would be enormous. Shayla's anonymity would be shattered. Her opponents, both foreign and domestic, would see an opening to exploit. Nonetheless, Shayla had little choice. She was in the den of wolves. She just lit the beacon for Victor to come. He would do everything in his power to protect her and keep her identity hidden, unless circumstances forced him to reveal the truth. The next day, Shayla was led in handcuffs to a cramped courtroom in the local judicial center. Her hearing was a preliminary one, meant to formally read the charges: possession of a controlled substance with intent to distribute and resisting arrest. She felt a storm of disbelief at how quickly the system churned out these accusations, seemingly without any thorough investigation. Shayla was given a cheap public defender, an overworked older gentleman named Louis Baker, who tried to reassure her but was visibly jaded from a lifetime of fighting losing battles in that county. Once inside, Shayla couldn't help scanning the room, searching for a sign of Victor or a legitimate attorney who might step in. The judge, a severe-faced woman named Susan Stone, strode into the courtroom in her black robes. She took her seat, and the bailiff called Shayla's case with robotic efficiency. The state prosecutor read out Shayla's alleged crime. Shayla's heart hammered with each syllable. Across the aisle, Shayla spotted officers Forbes and LeBron whispering to the prosecutor, exchanging smug glances. A wave of frustration and anger raged in Shayla's mind. She reminded herself to remain calm. Emotional outbursts could be twisted against her. The system thrived on that sort of sensational meltdown. Baker stood, clearing his throat. Your Honor, my client pleads not guilty. We believe the substances recovered were planted, and we request bail. The prosecutor scoffed. Your Honor, the officers have an airtight case. The suspect was found with a significant quantity of a controlled substance, and she resisted arrest. At that moment, Shayla had an overwhelming urge to speak out, but Baker had strongly advised her to let him do the talking. She inhaled deeply, forcing her gaze to remain respectful. Just when the tension felt unbearable, the door at the back of the courtroom creaked open. A tall figure stepped inside. Shayla recognized him instantly. Victor Lloyd, dressed in a sharp navy blue suit, his posture straight, his face calm. He locked eyes with Shayla for a half-second. A subtle nod passed between them. He carried a leather briefcase, the kind used by high-end attorneys or influential government officials. The entire courtroom seemed to bristle with electric current at his arrival. Judge Stone paused mid-sentence. Forbes and LeBron glanced over their shoulders. No one knew who he was, but the intangible force of his presence made people uneasy. Victor made his way to the front. The bailiff stiffened but didn't protest. The judge peered over her glasses. Sir, do you have business here? He flashed a warm but authoritative smile. I do, Your Honor, he said, handing over a neatly typed piece of paper. I'm representing Miss Shayla Bivens here. My name is Victor Lloyd, from the firm Lloyd & Keller. It was a half-truth. Victor had a legal degree, acquired long before he joined the intelligence community, but rarely practiced outside specialized NSA matters. Baker's jaw dropped slightly, as did Shayla's, though she hid it better. She'd expected Victor to orchestrate help, not to step in personally. The judge read the document Victor provided, then glanced at Shayla with renewed curiosity. I see. Counselor Lloyd, please proceed. Victor wasted no time. He addressed the bench with composure, calmly referencing Shayla's personal record, an esteemed citizen with no criminal history, as he put it. He pointed out inconsistencies in the officer's story. The prosecutor stiffened, unprepared to face such a cool, collected adversary. Watching Victor navigate the legal arena was mesmerizing. Shayla felt a burst of gratitude and a flicker of hope. Yet, the real revelation was still to come. For now, Victor withheld Shayla's true position. He argued she was a private citizen, a professional with the means and integrity to appear for her trial. He requested that she be released on her own recognizance. Judge Stone frowned, clearly conflicted, but Victor's persuasive presentation and Shayla's clean record tipped the scales. Finally, the judge nodded. Bail is set at a nominal fee, she decreed. Miss Bivens, you are released with the condition that you surrender your passport and remain in the jurisdiction. Court is adjourned. A wave of relief flooded Shayla as the gavel struck. She shot Victor a discreet look. He gave her a reassuring nod. For the moment, the system's gears had slowed, but Shayla had a nagging feeling Officer Forbes and Officer LeBron wouldn't simply let this go. She was certain there was a deeper plot behind this fiasco, and she sensed it was about to unravel in dramatic ways. The ride away from the courthouse felt surreal. Shayla sat in the back seat of a sleek black sedan. Victor's driver had the radio off, granting them privacy. Victor sat beside Shayla, carefully scrolling through documents on a secure tablet. The tinted windows shielded them from the outside world, a cocoon of high-tech secrecy in an otherwise chaotic day. She turned to Victor, forcing a tense smile. I didn't expect you to come in person, Shayla began, relief and concern mingling in her voice. Victor shook his head. We couldn't risk letting this escalate. If that precinct is as dirty as I suspect, you were in real danger. His gaze flicked to her face. Are you all right? Shayla exhaled. I'm furious. They planted evidence. Victor, this was no random encounter. Someone, I can't imagine what or who is behind it, but someone tried to take me out of the picture. She rubbed her temples. Thank you for intervening. A flicker of guilt crossed Victor's features. I wish I'd known sooner. You shouldn't have endured that cell. I'm sorry. She appreciated his concern, but Shayla's mind was already leaping ahead. She was a strategic thinker. If someone orchestrated her downfall, it meant there was a reason. Could it have been her race, her anonymity, or a more insidious motive tied to her top-secret role at the NSA? As the sedan glided through traffic, Victor pulled up a digital file on the precinct. That station has a record of complaints, excessive force, improper conduct. Most never stick. The local administration is either turning a blind eye or is complicit. Shayla's jaw tightened. I want them fully investigated. But first, we need to handle the immediate charges. If I'm forced to reveal my real position in court, it'll become national news. She bit her lip. The blowback on the agency, our operations. She didn't finish. They both knew the ramifications could be catastrophic for ongoing intelligence missions worldwide. Victor nodded. We'll try to keep it quiet for now. But be warned, Shayla, these officers seem determined. They'll try to push their narrative. If the local system is that rotten, they might pull every trick in the book, including forging lab results on that bag of powder. Shayla clenched her fists. Let them try. The truth is on our side, and I'll call in every resource if I have to. The sedan approached Shayla's suburban home. She felt the tension lift slightly as she recognized her quiet neighborhood. But Shayla knew better than to assume she'd be safe. She turned to Victor. Come inside for a minute. Inside her living room, Shayla sank onto the sofa. Victor took a seat across from her, a laptop perched on his knees. We need a real lawyer who can fight this in local courts, Shayla said. No offense, Victor, you were brilliant, but you have full-time duties at the agency. And if you remain front and center, it risks exposing who I am. He nodded. I've already contacted the law firm of Miller and Diaz. They have a top-notch criminal defense team in Prince George's County. They'll be here in the morning. Shayla breathed a sigh of relief. Good. I want to clear my name through the proper channels. But if push comes to shove, I'll do whatever it takes to end this charade. Victor rose to leave, giving Shayla a gentle look. Get some rest, he advised. Tomorrow, we start unraveling their corruption, piece by piece. He headed out, and Shayla was alone. Her mind refused to quiet. She imagined the horrors of police brutality, videos she'd seen over the years, the lost lives, the heartbreak. She'd always known she wasn't immune to that injustice, just because of her unique job. But to be framed so blatantly, to face the threat of a future behind bars for a crime she didn't commit, it was a gut punch. Now, she had a chance to fight back. She would do so not just for herself, but for anyone who'd been victimized by similar corruption. Next morning, Shayla woke early. She could barely sleep, replaying every second of the arrest. She needed answers. She retrieved her personal laptop, an innocuous device, but with hidden, secure compartments. She had the clearance and know-how to tap into certain databases to gather background intel on officers Forbes and LeBron. She also wanted to see if they had ties to bigger fish. Her login triggered a series of secure protocols. Shayla typed in her credentials, then initiated a search through open-source data first: civil complaints, disciplinary actions, news articles. She discovered that Forbes had been accused of racial profiling multiple times. Charges were dropped or settled quietly. LeBron had been involved in a suspicious shooting 2 years prior, but the grand jury didn't indict him. The pattern was consistent. These two officers had a knack for manufacturing probable cause, especially among minority drivers, and rarely faced consequences. Yet Shayla sensed something deeper. She dug into the property records around that precinct, discovered some unusual real estate transactions linked to an LLC. It was a shell company that Shayla suspected had ties to a local crime syndicate. She made a note to pass that lead to Victor or their intelligence resources. If these cops were on someone's payroll, to keep the pipeline of false arrests going, Shayla had just found the tip of the iceberg. By mid-morning, the legal team from Miller and Diaz arrived, 2 lawyers, Diana Diaz and her junior partner, Mark Jones. Diana was a tall, polished woman in her 40s, known for aggressive defense strategies. She perched on Shayla's couch, flipping through Shayla's case file with a keen eye. "This is outrageous," Diana muttered. "I've seen my share of planted evidence, but usually, they're more careful." "It's like they wanted to make a statement," Mark chimed in. "You sure you can't give us any more about your background? Anything that might explain why you'd be a target?" Shayla hesitated. "I work in cybersecurity for a government agency. That's as much as I can disclose for now." She used half-truths. She didn't want them to know she was effectively the boss of the NSA. That knowledge was on a strict need-to-know basis. "I suspect it's not personal. They might have chosen me because I was an easy target, a black woman traveling alone." Diana nodded, though Shayla saw a flicker of skepticism in her gaze. "Well, we'll build a defense around the lack of any real evidence. We'll subpoena the body cam footage, if they even had them on." She paused. "But if the system is as corrupt as rumored, we'll have to outmaneuver them." Shayla clenched her jaw. "They won't get away with it." She locked eyes with Diana. "Whatever it takes, I want the truth exposed." Diana gave a curt nod. "We'll do everything we can." When the lawyers left, Shayla's phone buzzed, a text from Victor. "Intel suggests a bigger operation behind that precinct. We'll explain later. Keep us posted." Shayla's chest tightened. She was right. There was more to this than a couple of dirty cops. She'd faced threats to national security before, but this was personal. And personal threats had a way of rattling even the most seasoned professional. Over the next week, Shayla did her best to resume a semblance of normalcy. She worked from home, coordinating with Victor and a few trusted NSA colleagues via secure channels. They discovered that certain local officials in Prince George's County had connections to that suspicious LLC Shayla had found. The money trail hinted at drug trafficking, real estate scams, and possibly even stolen data sold on the dark web. If Shayla's hunch was correct, officers Forbes and LeBron could be part of a broader web, using traffic stops to intimidate or recruit couriers, or, in Shayla's case, to forcibly remove troublemakers who stumbled too close to the truth. The question remained, why Shayla specifically? She was sure it wasn't random. Maybe a routine license plate scan turned up her name, flagged in certain systems, indicating she was no ordinary citizen. Perhaps the criminals behind the scenes wanted to undermine her before she stumbled upon something bigger. Her day in court loomed. Diana Diaz had filed motions to dismiss, but they were denied. The prosecutor, a weasel-like man named Arthur Reed, insisted the evidence was strong. Shayla's frustration boiled. She wanted to scream from the rooftops about her innocence, yet she had to keep her official identity under wraps. She'd placed her trust in the legal system, to some degree, but that trust was waning fast. One evening, Shayla was typing up a brief summary of her ordeal for Victor when the doorbell rang. She tensed. Unannounced visitors were rare. She checked her security camera feed. Standing at her doorstep was a young boy, maybe 15 or 16, wearing a hoodie, shifting anxiously. Shayla, her instincts on high alert, opened the door slightly. Miss Bivens?" the boy asked, eyes darting around. "I'm Kevin from the community center. You were supposed to teach a class last week." Shayla's heart softened. She vaguely recalled the name. Kevin was one of the bright kids she'd intended to help with cybersecurity. "Kevin, right? Is everything okay?" He handed her a flash drive, glancing over his shoulder. "I found this in the center's old laptop stash. It had your name on a note, sort of." He swallowed nervously. "I think you should see it." Shayla's eyebrows knitted. "Who gave this to you?" "Nobody. I was rummaging for an extra charger, and I found an envelope with SB written on it taped under a desk. It looked important. I got your address from the sign-up sheet." She motioned for him to come inside. He hesitated, glancing around again, then followed. Shayla led him to her living room. Kevin's posture screamed anxious fear. Shayla offered him water. "Thanks for bringing this. Did anyone else see you?" He shook his head. "No, ma'am. I'm real careful. I'm into hacking too, but just for good stuff. I'm not sure what's on that drive, but something told me it wasn't safe just lying around." Shayla inserted the flash drive into her secure laptop, scanning for viruses or Trojans. None found. Inside was a single folder labeled, "Watch Your Back." Shayla's heart hammered. She opened it and found a series of photos. Shayla on her usual route to the community center. Shayla stepping out of her car at a coffee shop. Shayla walking down a sidewalk. A chill rippled down her spine. Someone had been surveilling her long before the traffic stop. There was also a text file containing a cryptic message. "The cops are the least of your worries. They're just pawns. Someone is coming for you and your secrets." Shayla felt her blood run cold. Kevin peered over her shoulder. "What does it mean?" She quickly closed the file. "It means I need to be careful," she whispered, turning to Kevin. She gave him a reassuring smile. "I appreciate your bravery bringing this to me. From now on, stay out of trouble. If you see anything suspicious, call me immediately." He nodded. "Yes, ma'am," he said, voice trembling. Shayla walked him to the door, ensuring no one lurked outside. When the boy was gone, Shayla locked up, her mind in overdrive. This was bigger than a simple frame job. Someone out there knew Shayla's true identity, or at least suspected she had secrets worth protecting. The arrest might have been a test run to see how she'd react, or it could have been a strategic move to keep her busy with legal troubles while they advanced some sinister agenda. Shayla's phone buzzed. Another text from Victor. "We need to talk. Urgent." Shayla typed a quick reply. "I have intel too. Let's meet." The storm was gathering. Shayla braced for the inevitable clash. She wouldn't be a victim. She'd already decided that. She was Shayla Bivens, commanding respect in the halls of intelligence. It was high time the criminals in her hometown realized they'd targeted the wrong woman. They met later that night in a secure location, a parking garage in downtown D.C., a place the NSA sometimes used for clandestine rendezvous. The concrete walls loomed, the hum of traffic echoing overhead. Victor stood by his car, arms folded, scanning the environment for eavesdroppers. Shayla approached swiftly. "Any watchers?" Shayla asked quietly. "Not that I can see. I did a sweep." They stepped behind a pillar. Shayla handed Victor a copy of the flash drive's contents. She briefed him in hushed tones. Victor's expression darkened. "Someone's been surveilling you for weeks, possibly months. They knew your routine, your volunteer schedule. Any idea who?" Shayla asked. Victor rubbed his chin. "We've picked up chatter about a rogue network operating near D.C. They specialize in blackmail, data theft, and infiltration of local law enforcement. It's possible they discovered you're not just a regular cybersecurity consultant. They might not know everything, but enough to realize you're a threat." Shayla let out a slow breath. "And they used these crooked cops as foot soldiers to neutralize me?" Victor nodded gravely. "That's my theory. The cops might not even realize who they're truly serving. They're being paid under the table, fed certain targets, or maybe they suspect more, but they're greedy enough not to care." Shayla bristled with anger. "I won't let them tarnish my record or drag me through court on false charges. And if they're part of a bigger threat to national security, I want them dismantled. Victor placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. Agreed. But we must be strategic. If we blow your cover as director of the NSA, we risk exposing critical operations. However, we could apply pressure behind the scenes. We could get the FBI involved, or we could quietly pass evidence to the U.S. Attorney's Office. Shayla's eyes narrowed. She wanted immediate justice, but also understood the delicate balance. The last thing we need is a media frenzy, but I'm not going to prison over this. Let's gather irrefutable proof, then spring the trap. Victor gave a determined nod. We've already assigned a covert NSA team to investigate. They'll gather digital footprints, financial records, any communication logs that link the precinct to this rogue network. Once we have enough evidence, we'll lower the boom. Her thoughts raced. But my next court date is in 3 days. If the judge sees no progress, the prosecution might ramp up pressure or push for a plea deal. I won't accept that. Victor thought carefully. Then we'll accelerate our timeline. If everything goes well, we'll have enough to exonerate you and expose the corrupt ring in one sweeping move. Shayla stared into the dimly lit garage. This was bigger than her personal freedom. By protecting her life and identity, they'd also protect countless intelligence operations. The same day Shayla was forced to stand on the defensive in a local courtroom, she might end up toppling a criminal conspiracy from the inside. The stakes couldn't be higher. Let's do it, she said, her voice firm. Victor gave her a reassuring half-smile. And Shayla, watch your back. These people won't hesitate to escalate. She nodded, recalling the message on that drive. They'd singled her out, left a warning. But Shayla Bivens was no ordinary target. She was about to show them exactly what it meant to cross the highest-ranking woman in the NSA. The day arrived, gray clouds looming over the courthouse, as though nature itself reflected Shayla's anxiety. The courthouse halls bustled with attorneys, defendants, and clerks. Security officers scanned Shayla's bag, giving her lingering looks, as if recalling the sensational rumor that she was the drug-dealing hacker from last week. Diana Diaz walked beside Shayla, posture erect, hair pulled back, exuding confidence. Mark Jones trailed them, sorting documents, whispering updates about the prosecution's new claims. They're doubling down, Mark muttered. They want the maximum sentence. If you're convicted, they'll allege you were running some kind of distribution network. Shayla's jaw clenched. Absurd. They passed Officer Forbes and Officer LeBron in the hallway. The two men stared Shayla down, wearing smug half-smiles. She matched their gaze with quiet fury. Neither side spoke, but the tension crackled in the stale courthouse air. Inside the courtroom, Shayla took her seat at the defense table. She scanned the gallery, searching for Victor. He wasn't there. That was expected. He had to coordinate with the covert team. But Shayla still felt a pang of apprehension. She needed him. She needed the evidence he'd promised. The judge entered. The bailiff called the session to order, and the prosecutor, Reed, stood to lay out the charges again. He painted Shayla as a dangerous manipulator with a knack for technology. Shayla clenched her fists under the table. If they only knew the real scope of her technology skills. Diana calmly waited for Reed to finish, then rose. Your Honor, we have evidence proving the arresting officers have a documented history of misconduct. In addition, we have strong reason to believe the alleged contraband was planted. Diana presented official complaints and limited body cam footage, which showed suspicious gaps. We request that all charges be dropped immediately. Judge Stone scrutinized the body cam footage. It was heavily redacted, conveniently missing the moment Forbes claimed to find the drugs. The judge looked at Reed. Why is this footage incomplete? Reed hesitated. There were technical errors, Your Honor. The camera malfunctioned, but the officer's testimony is consistent, and they have no reason to fabricate evidence. At that moment, Shayla's phone, set to silent, vibrated in her purse. She glanced down discreetly, glimpsing a message from Victor. Showtime. Her pulse quickened. She knew something big was about to happen. The judge continued. Counselor Diaz, while I find these omissions troubling, the court has not seen definitive proof of your client's innocence. I will allow the prosecution to proceed. Diana started to object, but the judge raised a hand. We move forward with the pretrial hearing. Prosecution, call your first witness. Officer Forbes swaggered to the stand, glancing at Shayla with a sneer. Shayla struggled to maintain her composure. This was the man who'd orchestrated her humiliation. She listened to his perjured statements with quiet fury, how Shayla allegedly drove erratically, refused to step out, verbally abused him. The lies piled up. Diana cross-examined him, poking holes in his story. She confronted him about previous complaints of racial profiling. He dismissed them as misunderstandings. Shayla noticed the judge's skepticism. Perhaps Stone wasn't entirely blind to the possibility of corruption. Just as Forbes stepped down, the courtroom doors swung open. Heads turned. In strode Victor Lloyd, flanked by two well-dressed individuals Shayla recognized as high-level Department of Justice attorneys. Another man followed behind them, a broad-shouldered figure Shayla knew from the agency's internal security team. The entire room seemed to shift in their presence. Judge Stone's eyebrows rose. The prosecutor sputtered in confusion. Victor approached Diana and quietly whispered something. The lawyer's face lit with surprise. Judge Stone tapped her gavel. "Sir, may I ask what is going on here?" Victor offered a polite bow of his head. "Your Honor, my name is Victor Lloyd. I'm here with new evidence, critical to Miss Bivens's case." He handed the judge a neatly bound folder and several USB drives. "We ask permission to present it immediately." The prosecutor objected, but the judge's curiosity was piqued. She signaled them to proceed. Victor turned to Shayla, giving her a reassuring nod. Then, with meticulous poise, he addressed the court. "We have uncovered extensive proof that the contraband in question was planted. Furthermore, we have discovered that officers Kevin Forbes and Anthony LeBron are part of a larger corruption ring, tied to an organized crime network." A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Reed tried to shout objections, but the judge silenced him. Victor went on, detailing financial records showing monthly deposits into the officers' accounts from the same LLC Shayla had identified. He displayed screenshots of text messages where the officers discussed framing motorists. The evidence was damning. Tension soared. LeBron jumped to his feet, shouting that it was all fabricated. The bailiff moved to restrain him. Forbes's face turned ashen. Shayla's heart pounded with a mixture of relief and burning anger. The truth was finally out in the open. Then came the final blow. Robert revealed a short clip of unredacted body cam footage, gleaned from a hidden second camera. In it, LeBron could be seen slipping a plastic bag into Shayla's trunk while Forbes distracted her. The entire courtroom erupted in shocked murmurs. Shayla exhaled in vindication. There it was, undeniable proof she'd been framed. The judge's voice trembled with fury. She demanded order, banging her gavel. "Officers, you will surrender yourselves into custody pending further investigation," Judge Stone said. Forbes tried to protest, but the bailiff cuffed him. LeBron cursed, glaring at Shayla. Shayla stared back, unflinching. The prosecutor sagged, deflated. He offered a half-hearted apology to the court, blaming the officers for misleading him. Shayla wanted to laugh at his cowardice, but she kept her dignity intact. Judge Stone turned to Shayla. "Miss Bivens, the court hereby dismisses all charges against you. You are free to go. I apologize for the injustice you have endured." Relief washed over Shayla. She glanced at Victor, who gave a discreet nod. But the next words from the judge took Shayla and the entire courtroom by surprise. "Mr. Lloyd, you mentioned you work closely with Miss Bivens. May I ask, in what capacity?" The hush in the courtroom was absolute. This was the moment Shayla feared. Victor hesitated, then turned to Shayla, seeking guidance in his eyes. Shayla stood up, stepping forward, quiet authority radiating from her. Her voice, though calm, resonated with finality. "Your Honor, Mr. Lloyd is my subordinate at the National Security Agency. I am his superior." The reaction was instantaneous, a wave of gasps, stunned murmurs. The judge's eyes widened. Reed nearly choked on his own breath. Diana Diaz's mouth fell open. The reporters present scrambled to capture every word. Shayla's anonymity just took a serious hit, but in that charged second, none of it mattered. She wanted the truth out, to reclaim her dignity and destroy the veneer of power those crooked officers had dared to wield. It was a moment that would go down in the annals of that county's history. The highest-ranking NSA official wasn't the man who walked in with the evidence. No, he was outranked by the very woman they had dared to frame. The real storm was only beginning. In the days that followed, the local news exploded with the story. Headlines screamed, "Black woman framed by corrupt cops secretly top NSA official." Shayla's photo plastered the news channels, her carefully maintained anonymity shredded. Analysts speculated what her exact position was at the NSA. The official line from the agency was to neither confirm nor deny, Yet the phrase, highest-ranking woman in the NSA, circulated, fueling sensational debates. Public opinion was firmly on Shayla's side. She received messages of support from civil rights organizations, from ordinary citizens outraged by the brazen corruption. The county's police chief quickly resigned under pressure, proclaiming ignorance. The mayor announced a broad internal investigation of the entire police department. Officers Forbes and LeBron faced federal charges for conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and more. Their fall from power was swift and merciless. Shayla found herself thrust into an uncomfortably bright spotlight. She addressed the press only once, releasing a short statement. "I am grateful that justice prevailed. I hope this case serves as a reminder that no one is above the law and no one is beneath its protection." Privately, Shayla was still processing the magnitude of the betrayal and the sudden exposure of her identity. But she refused to be cowed by it. The bigger fish, the rogue network funding the cops, didn't escape scrutiny. Thanks to the NSA team's deep dive, the FBI launched several raids. Key figures were arrested, and Shayla's intelligence proved invaluable in dismantling a dangerous syndicate. The impact was massive: stolen data seized, drug shipments intercepted, and a pipeline of bribery laid bare. Shayla took private satisfaction in knowing that those who had tried to orchestrate her downfall had instead unleashed their own destruction. But Shayla also knew she couldn't return to her old life of anonymity. She met with Victor in a secure conference room at NSA headquarters, a hush settling around them as they discussed the next steps. Shayla suspected the agency's higher-ups might be uneasy that her name was now a public point of interest. Indeed, the Director of National Intelligence had already expressed concern over Shayla's forced reveal. "It was bound to happen eventually," Shayla said softly, glancing at Victor. "Given the nature of our work, I always knew a moment might come when I'd have to step into the light." Victor nodded, empathy in his eyes. "And you did it with grace. You turned a travesty into an example of justice. The country, honestly, is admiring you right now." Shayla offered a wry smile. "Admiration or not, we need to keep pushing for reforms. The corruption in that county wasn't an isolated incident. This is a chance to catalyze change." Victor studied her, a proud glimmer in his gaze. "What will you do next?" Shayla leaned back, letting her eyes roam over the high-tech displays around them. "I'll do my job, protect national security. But I also want to use my voice to speak against abuses of authority, starting with the local level, then wherever else the fight leads me." It was a new chapter in Shayla's life. Freed from the false charges, she was also freed from hiding in the shadows. And though she'd never sought the limelight, she wouldn't squander the opportunity to make a difference. Forbes and LeBron sat in a stark interrogation room. Gone were their uniforms, replaced by orange jumpsuits. Their lawyer was a pale, sweating man who informed them the FBI had evidence that could bury them. The officers' smirks had vanished. Their entire world collapsed, and now they begged for plea deals. The local community they once terrorized rejoiced in their downfall. More arrests followed: corrupt city officials, shady real estate brokers, middlemen who laundered dirty money. Each new indictment signaled the slow but inevitable unraveling of the conspiracy. Victims of these predatory practices, people who had served jail time on trumped-up charges, came forward to share their stories, fueling public outrage. Class action lawsuits stacked up against the county. For Shayla, witnessing the karmic reckoning was both gratifying and sobering. The scale of injustice was bigger than she'd realized. She recalled sitting in that holding cell, fear swirling in her gut. If she, a top intelligence official, could be treated that way, what chance did others have? Yet Shayla also recognized a sliver of hope. With the corruption laid bare, the community stood a chance to rebuild. New leadership in the police force, new accountability measures, real, meaningful reform. And Shayla intended to watch it closely. She had the power and connections to make sure no one conveniently swept the issues under the rug. In time, Shayla found a sense of closure. She revisited the community center, determined to fulfill the promise she'd made to Kevin and the other kids. The staff welcomed her with a standing ovation, grateful for her perseverance. Shayla set up a permanent program, offering free cybersecurity and coding classes. She funded it herself, ensuring the youth would have a safe environment to learn and thrive. One evening, after helping Kevin debug a tricky coding project, Shayla stepped outside into the cool dusk. She gazed at the street where she'd once been arrested. Instead of haunting her, the memory fueled her resolve. Life had tested her. Corrupt cops had tried to break her. But in the end, they'd broken themselves on the anvil of truth. Back at NSA headquarters, Shayla's office was perched high on a secure floor, a glass window overlooking the Maryland landscape. She could see the horizon line, dotted with trees and roads leading away from Fort Meade. Shayla swiveled her chair, letting her eyes rest on the setting sun. She thought about the young Shayla she once was, growing up in a tough neighborhood, devouring books on technology, dreaming of a future in which she could make a difference. She recalled mentors who told her she could change the world if she only dared. And now, here she sat, leading one of the most formidable intelligence agencies on the planet. A soft knock on her door broke her reverie. Victor stepped in. "Got a minute?" "Always," Shayla said, gesturing for him to have a seat. He perched on the edge of a chair. "The dust is settling. The Director of National Intelligence wants to meet with you about the public image fallout, but I have a feeling they'll frame it as wanting to celebrate your courage." He made air quotes. Shayla sighed. "I'll handle it. They'll want to spin it. I just hope it leads to real dialogue about abuses of power, not just lip service." Victor nodded. "Also, you have invitations to speak at several law enforcement conferences. Seems they want your perspective on integrity and reform." He offered a half smile. "You're in high demand." Shayla shook her head, a wry grin forming. "Funny how the system that nearly devoured me now wants my spotlight. But if it helps fix cracks in policing, I'll do it." They exchanged a knowing glance. Shayla had always believed in the importance of oversight and checks on power. Her entire career at the NSA was a delicate balance of national security versus civil liberties. Her personal ordeal with corrupt local police only underscored how urgent and universal that struggle was. Victor stood to leave, then paused. "Before I forget, some of the younger agents saw the footage of you in court the moment you revealed your role. They said it gave them goosebumps." Shayla laughed softly. "Is that so? Word is, they're calling you the hidden lioness of the NSA. Don't ask me who started it." Victor's grin widened. Shayla rolled her eyes with amusement. "That's certainly dramatic." He shrugged. "It fits. You stayed hidden, but when cornered, you roared." Though Shayla's charges were dismissed, the court required her presence for the sentencing phase of Forbes and LeBron. She didn't have to attend, but Shayla wanted to witness the end of their reign. Cameras flocked outside the courthouse. Shayla navigated them with measured calm, ignoring reporters' shouted questions. Inside, the judge, this time a different one given the criminal nature of the case, read the list of offenses. The sentencing was severe, a combined total of decades behind bars. The officers, no longer cocky, looked pale and shaken. Shayla watched them, feeling neither pity nor revenge. She simply felt relief. Their downfall was their own doing. When the gavel struck, Shayla stepped into the aisle. Forbes's eyes locked with hers momentarily, a swirl of regret and anger in his gaze. She couldn't read his exact emotion, nor did she want to. In Shayla's mind, justice was done. Hard karma had indeed come back around, swift and unyielding. As she exited the courtroom, Shayla found a quiet hallway to gather her thoughts. She inhaled, then exhaled slowly. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind. She was no longer simply Shayla Bivens. In the eyes of the public, she was Shayla Bivens, the formidable NSA official who took on a corrupt system and won. She'd pay a price for that notoriety, but she accepted it. If her story could help rectify systemic wrongs, then the cost was worth it. Later that evening, Shayla convened a private meeting at the community center. She was greeted by applause from local residents and activists. They wanted to hear about next steps, how to ensure such corruption never again took root. Shayla stood before them, less as an NSA authority and more as a concerned citizen. She spoke passionately about accountability, the importance of vigilance, and the power of unified communities. "It's not just about punishing bad officers," Shayla said. "It's about building a culture of integrity in law enforcement. We need systems that protect good officers and remove bad ones. We need transparent oversight, citizen review boards, body cameras that actually function." This case was a wake-up call. The crowd nodded in agreement. People asked questions, shared personal experiences with the justice system. Shayla listened intently, making notes, promising to connect them with resources. In that humble room, Shayla felt more certain than ever. Her life's mission had expanded beyond national security. She was now fighting for security at home too. economic security, social justice, the bedrock of trust between communities and their protectors. Victor showed up near the end, quietly watching from the back. After the meeting concluded, Shayla approached him. "Thanks for coming," she said softly. He smiled. "Couldn't miss it. That was inspiring." She shrugged slightly. "It's just the start. There's so much to fix." He nodded. "One step at a time. But if anyone can drive change, it's you." His tone carried a deep admiration, a faith in her leadership. Weeks rolled into months. Headlines moved on, news stories capturing the public's attention. But in Prince George's County, the echoes of Shayla's case lingered. The new police chief began a top-down overhaul. Training programs emphasized de-escalation and community engagement. Oversight committees gained real power. People who once felt hopeless now had a spark of belief in justice. Meanwhile, Shayla continued her high-stakes work at the NSA. She oversaw complex cyber operations, collaborated with global partners to thwart threats, and steered the agency with relentless dedication. Yet she also maintained her ties to the local community. She donated funds, spoke at gatherings, mentored youth who aspired to shape the future. Shayla had become a symbol of resilience, an unexpected champion who bridged the highest echelons of power and the grassroots fight for equality. Late one night, Shayla sat at her desk, finishing up a classified briefing. She scrolled through the final pages, then glanced at a framed photo perched near her keyboard. It was a snapshot from a recent volunteer event, Shayla flanked by Kevin and other bright young students. They beamed at the camera, the promise of their futures shining in their eyes. Shayla couldn't help smiling. She'd seen so much darkness, confronted so many threats, but looking at those kids, she felt the enduring light of hope. She closed the file, powered down the computer. Outside the window, a waxing moon glowed over the campus of Fort Meade. Shayla allowed herself one last moment of reflection. Life had thrown her a crisis she never anticipated, arrest by corrupt cops, a humiliating ordeal. But she emerged stronger, her spirit tempered by the flames of injustice. The very system that tried to crush her had been reformed by the truth she refused to hide. No matter where she went from there, whether continuing her hush-hush intelligence work or stepping publicly into the ring of social justice, Shayla Bivens knew she had already made an indelible mark on her world, and she was only getting started. Thank you for journeying with us through the incredible, true-to-life story of Shayla Bivens, the resilient Black woman who stood her ground against a broken system and emerged as a powerful advocate for justice. From that harrowing traffic stop to the bombshell courtroom showdown, Shayla's refusal to be silenced brought swift karma to the corrupt officers who dared to frame her. In the process, she forever changed an entire community's relationship with law enforcement and exposed a deeper conspiracy that threatened national security. If this story of triumph over adversity, injustice, and secrecy resonated with you, let's keep the conversation going. Help us shine a brighter light on truth and accountability by liking this video, sharing it with your friends, and subscribing to our channel. Let Shayla Bivens' story inspire you to stand up, speak out, and believe that change, even in the face of corruption, is possible.